Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video I will explain is Indian fertilizer sector under shock due to Hormuz crisis. As you all know, the war is going between Iran, Israel and USA. Due to that, the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and due to that logistic and input costs has increased. Further we will discuss the driving force behind the surge of fertilizer prices, type of fertilizers are affected the most, and the impact of surge on the India and the world. From India imports, from which countries India imports fertilizers, and what are the steps India taking to diversify its fertilizer needs. The effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz is said to trigger a significant input cost and logistics shock for the Indian fertilizer sector, although the industry currently maintains comfortable near-term supplies. Fertilizers are one of the major sectors amongst the eight core sectors of India and the backbone of agriculture sector. The eight core sectors of India are coal, crude oil, natural gas, refinery products, fertilizers, steel, cement, and electricity, forming the backbone of the country's industrial growth. The eight core sectors are the primary industries that drive India's industrial and economic activity. They are considered core because they provide essential inputs such as energy, raw materials, and construction resources that support manufacturing, transportation, agriculture, and services. These sectors collectively account for over 40% of the index of industrial production, making them a critical indicator of the country's industrial performance. What is driving the surge in fertilizer prices? The international fertilizer prices have surged sharply in March 2026, rising above 21% due to Middle East conflicts and export restrictions from major producers like China and Russia. This spike is disrupting global agricultural supply chains and raising concerns about food inflation for the upcoming planting season. Affected products: nitrogen-based fertilizers, urea, ammonium nitrate, and potash are most impacted. What is the impact of price surge? Asia, India and China: higher import costs. India heavily reliant on Middle East urea supplies. Effect on Latin America: rising costs for soybean and corn producers, Brazil particularly vulnerable. United States: the farmers face higher input costs, especially for corn and wheat. Europe: already strained by energy costs, fertilizer imports now more expensive. The DAP segment faces highest risk. The diammonium phosphate (DAP) segment faces the highest level of risk due to its structural reliance on foreign markets. The report stated that DAP remains the most exposed due to import dependence and import chain vulnerability. While India relies on Middle Eastern partners, the report clarified that Saudi supply is strategically important but Hormuz exposed. Indian fertilizer imports: India primarily imports fertilizers from Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Morocco, with additional supplies from countries like Jordan, Israel, and Indonesia. Major fertilizer suppliers to India. In 2024, India's top fertilizer import sources were Russia $1.61 billion supplying urea, DAP and NPK fertilizers, Saudi Arabia $1.39 billion mainly potassic fertilizers, MOP and urea, Morocco $958 million primarily potash, Oman $898 million largely urea, China $858 million supplying water-soluble fertilizers P&K fertilizer and urea. Other notable suppliers include Canada, UAE, Jordan, Israel and Indonesia, which contribute to phosphatic and potassic fertilizer imports. Fertilizer types and supplier specialization. Urea, nitrogen-based. India imports significant quantities from Oman, Russia, Saudi Arabia and Nigeria, with Oman alone contributing nearly 46% of urea imports. Muriate of potash (MOP) dominated by Saudi Arabia 42% and Morocco 24% with China and Jordan also supplying smaller volumes. Di-ammonium phosphate (DAP). Russia is the largest supplier followed by Jordan, Israel, Turkmenistan and Canada. NPK fertilizers. Russia leads with Saudi Arabia, China and Indonesia as additional sources. Recent trends and diversification. India has been diversifying its fertilizer import sources to reduce dependence on West Asia due to geopolitical risks. Russia, China, Indonesia, Morocco, and Belarus have emerged as key alternative suppliers, especially for urea and phosphatic fertilizers. Water-soluble fertilizers, crucial for horticulture crops, are largely imported from China, with supplementary supplies from Belgium, Egypt, Germany, Morocco, and the USA. Strategic considerations. India's reliance on few countries for urea and DAP creates vulnerability to supply disruptions, particularly in the Strait of Hormuz, a major shipping route. The government encourages diversification and domestic production expansion, including reviving urea plants in Telangana, Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, Odisha, and Bihar, adding 50.8 lakh tons per year to domestic capacity. Economic immunity and strategic autonomy. Domestic urea production acts as a shield against the volatility of the Strait of Hormuz and global trade wars and expected to increase by 23% in 2026. The self-reliance push the Atmanirbhar impact of keeping billions of dollars within the Indian economy rather than exporting them to overseas suppliers. India has moved from a fertilizer deficit towards surplus. With stronger domestic stocks and a reduced dependence on imports, India's current stability with respect to other developing nations and Europe that are currently facing energy crisis and crop failures due to the fertilizer blockade is much better than them. Scaling the future of Indian agriculture. The remaining hurdles, such as farmer education and the widespread adoption of drone-based spraying for liquid fertilizers, is very much important. We have to understand the long-term environmental benefits of shifting away from chemical-heavy imports to precision-based domestic nutrients. The vision of India moving from a desperate importer to a global exporter of agricultural technology in a volatile world seems to be very much possible if we focus on domestic production and promote our fertilizer sector. Thank you.